Hi, I'm Beck and I'm a property investor.
And I'm Daria. I own my own home and I'm curious about investing.
We're the hosts of Investors in the Wild.
We've heard it all before. Build your wealth, get expert advice, learn about high yield, high growth investments, blah, blah, blah.
That's just not us. We're real mates with real talk about real estate. No ego, no financial advice.
It's all about wins you can use right now.
Let's get into it. G'day, we've got the latest episode of Steve Says, minus Steve. He was busy leveling a backyard this week, so couldn't join. I inspected two places without Steve. Daceyville, again, and there were some very interesting developments. And then we ran to an auction down the road. So firstly, Daceyville. I went back there. The owner actually met us and took us through the property, which was unusual, but good. I learned a fair bit from him. He has a very different approach to property investing. And, one of our guiding principles is look at things differently. I look at the things investors do, and would that work for me? Would it move me forward? And this investor has some ideas that I'd never thought about. Now, this investor mentioned selling places in Randwick, in Daceyville, in Maroubra. So he had quite a few properties, which is why I think it's interesting to just observe some of the things he does that I wouldn't think about. And so you might find it interesting. So this second Daceyville inspection, there were no mating bin chickens winning, and there were only two planes that went overhead in about 20 minutes. So it wasn't as constant as I remember it being for the first inspection. And another thing is that there were quite a few windows and vents open. When I asked the landlord why the vents were closed last time, he shared that a tenant was closing the windows and vents to avoid spiders. So I became more convinced of the place after this inspection. Now, the things that this investor said that were really interesting, I asked him why he doesn't use a regular real estate agent for leasing out the place. And he pointed out that if you do rentals on, say, flatmatefinders.com versus regular real estate rentals, there's a drastic difference in how much the house would be rented for. With Flatmate Finders, he leases out each via a separate agreement, and that's how he's able to get $1,800 a week. Whereas if he was renting via a conventional real estate agent, he'd get about $1,000 a week. Not to mention the fact that he saves on the weekly commissions. It's about $50 a week. Obviously, this isn't an approach that's open to every investor and every investment, but I find it interesting that if you've got a place that's close enough to a university, you can have the same place and earn 45 grand more every year if you're happy to manage the place yourself. Now, obviously, that's not an option open to all of us. Most of us work. There's no way, we could pick up managing 5 separate tenancies at the same time. But he's retired, so he has the time to do it. Made me wonder whether I could ask mum to do it if I was in a similar situation. An extra $45,000 is substantial. Now, one of the big problems of that, and this landlord mentioned it as well, is when he goes on holidays, something inevitably breaks, someone inevitably locks themselves out of the house. And so it is pretty time intensive to manage the property yourself. But for $45,000 extra each year, you're going to get some hassles. The other thing that I thought was interesting is he would rather sell places himself rather than have an agent sell it. And that's another way that he saves tens of thousands of dollars every time he sells a place. Again, he can do it because he's retired, but certainly that's something that I've never thought of doing, but could consider if I had a bit more time on my hands. And, it does save you tens of thousands of dollars. So I mentioned in the last update, Daceyville's guiding about 1.9 mil. In the end, my boyfriend decided it's too much work, too much hassles. He wants something that's going to be a little bit easier for us to buy, which is a bummer, but it is what it is. We then went to an auction that was down the road. This house in Rosebery had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms versus Daceyville, which has 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms. This place was 500 square meters, so about 20% larger than Daceyville. And it was a freestanding, whereas Daceyville is a semi. Now, the house in Rosebery ended up selling at auction for $3.4 million, which is well above the budget that Andreas and I. And it really shows that the houses in the east are out of reach for us at the moment, unless they're in Daceyville. And Andreas has now said Daceyville is out of limits. The other thing that I found really interesting about Rosebery that I'll just show is it's amazing how much of a difference a new lick of paint makes to a place. Here's what the place looked like the last time it was advertised, and this was the most recent time. So you can see they've refreshed the paint They've removed the bigger trees. So I'm sure all of that contributed to a very healthy sales price. So the house inspections continue for me. And so we'll be inspecting again next week with Steve. Wish me luck.